small businesses do not seem to be reaching the intended beneficiaries while the pandemic is surging. On the other hand, the Department of Small Business Development has been accused of staying silent about its failure to distribute COVID-19 relief funds. Khanki Matabane, CEO of the Black Business Council, that person, Khanki Matabane, is going to be joining us via the virtual medium, as we always do here on Newzroom Afrika. And then in studio, I have Martin Hlongwa. He is a small business owner. Is joining me now in studio. We're also going to have Tumi Sefolo. He is with the organization SIFA, and that organization closely aligned to the Department of Small Business Development. Let me start in studio. Bob Hlongwa, thank you very much for making the time to speak to us. I understand that you run a tavern, or is it a shebeen? Tell us where it is and whether you are a legal permit holder or to run such an establishment.
Good afternoon, Koli. This is Martin Hlongwa. Firstly, I'd like to say, as I was driving to the studio, I get news about people who've passed on. And
yes.
It's very, very, very disturbing. I understand we are faced with an enemy that's just not caring for whether you're a priest or whether you're a doctor or whether you're old or young. True. And as a business owner, I feel for those. We all know people that are close to us or people that we are related to who've passed on during this pandemic. Okay. I am running a pub in Dawn Park, okay?
Yes.
I'm a member of SALTA, which is the South African Liquor Traders Association. Koli, I'm operating on a permit, liquor permit, these permits were given to us in 2003 and were promised within 12 months these would be converted into licenses.
Yes.
We're still waiting. There's been court battles, and we've won one recently, 2018, where the High Court in Johannesburg told both the Liquor Board and the Department of Economic Development to get their act together and let the small businesses run.
Yeah.
So we've been running without renewals and stuff like that, but we'd like to be like a tavern license where you renew annually and pay your dues to SARS.
Yeah. So right now,
great.
So right now, what is the piece of paper that you are running your small business?
It is called a shebeen permit. Now let me tell you, shebeen permit
okay.
is only legal in Gauteng. It was what we call an RDP license.
Right.
Yeah. It's not renewable and it's not transferable. Unfortunately, if I pass on, my family cannot run on that permit. It was only issued strictly to me. So these are some of the issues we have with this document.
All right.
But we call it a shebeen permit, but it is not a national document.
I see. Bob Hlongwa, then let's quickly move to the reason why you are here. And that is that you are struggling as things are right now, and it's as a result of the ban on alcohol. This is the third ban that we have seen since the beginning of March last year when this pandemic hit us. How is your business doing right now?
Very true. We're struggling, Koli. When the first lockdown came through, there was talk about 20,000 relief fund, 20,000 rands relief fund for shebeens or taverns, the people in the liquor trade, that is, which never came through. And like, as you say, we're on to the third. So if you calculate those 20,000, we're now talking 60,000 rands that was promised us, which has never come through.
So you're saying that the promise was that with every alcohol ban, starting from the time that we went into a hard lockdown, I think it was in March last year, you were supposed to receive 20,000 in order to try and soften the blow. And then the next ban, you also would be entitled to another 20,000. And now the third one, essentially you should be sitting on 60,000, is it?
Yeah, it wasn't put in those exact words, but it was promises, you know,
Right.
and it built up the hopes of the people on the ground. We managed to survive because some of the taverns and shebins had shares with the South African breweries. And the brewery was quick to give us some relief fund, so to say. Some other liquor companies gave us food parcels in the form of vouchers, and that would be like there's about 45,000 of us. Not everybody got something to see them through. Yeah, that was the main crux of the whole debate. But the debate was, please kindly afford these people at least 20,000 rands. But I know it's not much to go on, but at least it alleviated a lot of stress on our people.
Yeah.
And people will be able to pay their dues, you know, like your medical aids and pay your municipality bills and stuff like that. But that never came through. Yeah.
Mr. Martin, Babhlonga, I should actually say, now we are on a third ban, as you know.
Yeah.
The Liquor Traders Forum, I think that it speaks for it's almost an umbrella body, if you like, of liquor traders. They are arguing that the president needs to lift the ban immediately, otherwise people like yourselves will probably never return to business if this goes on for any longer. But the argument is that the alcohol sales should be sold off-site. That means people can buy takeaways, perhaps from a shebeen like yours, but they must go and drink it at home, not at the establishment. That kind of decision, if it were to come about, how would it help your business?
We were currently operating in that fashion, Paul. Yeah, I was one of the people who were mooted the idea of operating like a spaza shop. You know, you've got people buying from Pick and Pay, Checkers and everything, like something like of the sort now. But we were operating from your burglar bars so that people don't gain entry into the establishment. And we were surviving well. And we thought with this second ban, maybe, they would say, operate like your off-consumption, your bottle stores.
Yes.
And operate, say, Monday to Thursday, and then cut off for the weekend, but stick to the off-sale concept. This is what we were doing, and we were happy with it. So because some of the places are very small, and we didn't want congestion and all that, and it was actually safer for us because there was a whole lot of robberies and stuff, and our members were targeted to say, close our shop early, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and that's it. Just to observe the curfew too. Yeah.
Just out of interest, how many people do you employ at your tavern, or how many people were employed at your tavern, and do those people still have their jobs?
I've got 5 guys under my employment, and of the 5, because I've also got rooms for them, I have to make sure they eat, but we've stopped operating. They understand no work, no pay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the month, we make sure they still have money to send to our families because it's very hard. I bought stocks, like all of us bought stocks in anticipation of the festive season.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're not able to pay the suppliers in time, and stocks is going off. You check the dates on the shit, and you see you have to throw most of the stuff off.
Because alcohol does expire as well.
Exactly, especially your beer, and that's your volume sales, where you get volume sales. And your ciders, you have to be sure about the due dates then. So we have a problem where, you see, if I was, I'm just worried because I might take some of your time. A tavern, actually shebeen, the concept of a shebeen, came out of a resistance to the apartheid structures. That is why the apartheid government used to call Eshebin a smokkel haze. They had total disregard for it. But this is where during the defiance campaigns, plans were hatched in Eshebin. The Shebin played a very pivotal role in the struggle of the black men. But now, unfortunately, our government came over, took the legislation from the apartheid. I'm not too sure if they changed anything. I think they only sugar-coated some of the laws, and that is why they are unable to help us out.
Yeah.
Because it's not in their part.
All right. Babuhlonga, I'm going to ask us to pause for a second there because there are other guests that I need to introduce to this discussion. We also have Khanki Matabane. Mr. Matabane, if you can hear us, I hope that you have been able to hear just some of my discussion with Mr. Martin Hlongwa in studio here with me. You represent the Black Business Council, and I know you advocate for small, medium enterprises. But just listening to his story, what comes to mind in as far as trying to help these businesses is concerned? How do you respond to just some of the difficulties that he is experiencing right now because of the restrictions on alcohol?
Afternoon, Goli, fellow panelists and the viewers at home. We do have a load shedding here, so I hope you'll be able to hear me because I'm using the
You are
Wi-Fi
crystal
that,
clear.
Is stable.
You're crystal clear. I don't know how you're doing it, but you're managing very well.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. And I think that's one of the issues I think that we need to discuss at some stage.
Yeah.
The impact of load shedding on small businesses.
True.
Because it's not necessarily helpful as far as small businesses are concerned.
Yes.
I think listening to Mr. Hlongwa, what is saying, you'll hear, for example, that maybe as a country we're not necessarily having the right discussions. He sort of is not looking for loans, and if you look at most of the relief funds that were introduced by government, all departments, including the one that was introduced by the state president, is not grants. I think if you listen to Mr. Hlongwa, he's actually looking for grants, not for loans.
Yes.
Because if you have not been operating for some times to try and get a loan, is firstly difficult because you may not even qualify as far as the banks are concerned. Secondly, your company may not afford, from a balance sheet point of view, may not afford extra loans. So perhaps maybe the discussion we should be having is that how can we look at the relief programs that are available and then say, how do we convert them to
grants
to help him by looking at instead of loans and we go for grants. But also we need to understand that government doesn't have money. So if we say grants, where are we going to get that money? So, but I think that is the discussion we should be having.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Matabane, let me pause with you there for a second and let me also bring into the conversation Tumi Sefullo, the Executive Lending at Small Enterprise Finance Agency, that's SIFA. Ms. Sefullo, you have listened to Mr. Hlongwa, you've listened to Khanki Matabane from the BBC. It's your turn to make us understand, if you go back to the point that Khanki Matabane is making, that government has been issuing loans as opposed to grants. And a person like Mr. Hlongwa, who runs a tavern, they need assistance in the form of a grant as opposed to a loan. What have you been doing from your side to try and help out?
Good afternoon, Kholi, and good afternoon to the fellow panelists and the listeners. Firstly, let me express my compassion for Babuhlonga and many other business owners in the country that are seized with the same challenge. I do concede that those that are operating in the liquor industry are even more severely hit. However, we are all, as a country, faced with very difficult times. And I think the Department of Small Business Development, of which CIFA is an agency, implementing agency of the department, we've been seized with this problem since February last year, in terms of trying to design products and programs that will not burden business owners, but at the same time taking into account the point that Khanki mentioned, that the government does not have money and that we cannot afford to, unlike other programs, to simply make it completely grants. So the approach we've taken in many of the programs that we're implementing is a blended finance approach, where we say a part of the funding we provide is a grant and a part of the funding that we provide is a repayable loan. We do this because we want to ensure, firstly, that we are engaging with serious business owners such as Babshonga, and not as people who are trying to take advantage of the state. Number two, we appreciate that during these difficult times, it's very difficult for a business owner to know how much they'll be able to repay when the economy is able to operate fully. In the SMME relief scheme that we implemented from April until May last year, 2019, that was a 100% loan scheme. But then we designed a range of economic recovery schemes to cater in particular to businesses operating in townships and in rural areas. And in those schemes, it's a combination of a grant and a loan. Some of those schemes include Spaza Shops, the Spaza Shop Support Scheme, which is a grant and a loan, a clothing and textile scheme, automotive and auto body repairers and mechanics scheme. And there's a list of other schemes that we've designed, bearing in mind that we really want to assist those business owners that are most in need, but in a manner that will be sustainable in the long term.
Okay, can I ask you, Dumi, how people were able to get a hold of you? Are people aware of the agency that you are working in conjunction with the Department of Small Business Development?
We have been on several campaigns, mainly targeting community radio stations, as well as some of the platforms, digital platforms, because we do take into account that social media does play a big role in our society. So all our schemes have been publicized since last year. I would argue probably since about August last year, we've been aggressively campaigning the schemes. And then over and above that, on the various websites, the Department of Small Business website, the CIFA website, as well as the CIDA website, business owners are able to access all the information. And then, as mentioned previously by the Minister, on the Spaza Support Program, we work very closely with commercial banks, which are Nedbank and Standard Bank. And they have graciously also embarked on media campaigns to popularize the Spaza Support Program to ensure that as many business owners are aware of it. Over and above that, we've also adopted an approach as a portfolio that we go to communities, and this was obviously after the second wave had subsided and before the first wave had subsided and the second wave, before the second wave, where professionals, teams from CIFA, CIDA, and DSBD went around the country to every single municipality, district municipality, all 44 of them, and had engagement sessions with people on the ground to inform them of the programs, how to apply, and to assist them in the application process.
Yeah. And how many informal businesses would you say you have helped thus far? And I'm very specific in my wording when I say informal, because I want to bring into the picture businesses such as those of Ubabu Hlongwane that I'm sitting with in studio. I'm deliberately ignoring Khanki Matabane for now, who represents a formalized business sector, which is small, medium enterprises.
So the programs that I'm referring to are specifically targeted to informal businesses. The Spaza Shop Support Program is an informal business scheme. The only requirement we have on that is that you should have, obviously, the necessary permit from your local municipality. We have a fruit and vegetable vendor scheme. On that scheme, all you have to have is the necessary permit, also an informal scheme. The informal textile and clothing scheme, also informal. So all the schemes that I'm referring to are for and aimed at informal businesses in our economic recovery.
And you
in terms of how many...
Yes, that's the question I want you to get to.
Okay. So in terms of how many we've assisted, on the Spaza Shop Support Program, there have been in excess of 9,000 applications across the country, and we have funded in excess of 5,000 Spaza shops across the country. The other schemes really opened, I think, around October, September last year, and we've had a low uptick in those schemes, and that's why we then engaged on campaigns to popularize the schemes. The numbers vary, but in total, I would estimate that we're probably sitting at around only about 500. And we are looking to still service and support those informal businesses. And so these schemes will continue to run, so they're not closed at this point.
All right. And so these 5,000 informal businesses you've helped, included in them your spaza shops, taverns, ship-ins. Is that the picture we're looking at?
No. So the 5,000 is spaza shops only, and then another probably 500 across a range of other businesses. Our schemes at the moment are not necessarily targeting taverns. We have not designed a scheme for taverns. The difficulty that we have, and I think Uba Pshonga alluded to it, is that taverns sit within the purview from a licensing perspective from local provincial economic departments purview. However, as the Department of Small Business, given the severe impact that liquor traders and liquor owners are faced with at the moment, there's obviously an opportunity for us to go back to the drawing board and see how we can assist. I can't at this stage commit that there will be any formal assistance. But as programs move, obviously we have to, or rather as the pandemic continues, we have to be adjust to what is happening in the economy and respond adequately.
And it's a very important admission that you make there to me, because it then tells me and Ubabuhlongwa here that taverns and shebeens have simply not benefited at all from these COVID-19 relief funds. Do I understand you correctly?
Of the funds that are being implemented by the Department of Small Business and CIFA, no. Taverns and shebeens have not to date benefited. As I indicated, there is no program at this stage for taverns and shebeens.
Babhlonga, how do you respond to that?
Thank you, Sumi. As I said earlier on, these departments took over from the apartheid government, and we were not recognized as any kind of business. And unfortunately, we've, how many years after independence, our government still
This is the 27th year.
Exactly. And in the steps of where Steve Biko, black men, you are on your own. This is exactly what's happening to us. We are on our own. We started the taverns through the sweat of our brows. You know, Genesis 3:19. I'm not very pious, but I've seen that. And we started these things, but when we need assistance, we're not being assisted, but we are stopped just midstream to say you cannot operate. As I'm talking to you, there's a lot of giants in the liquor industry who've succumbed to COVID. COVID is an opportunistic virus. If you get stressed, there's no coming back.
You're gone.
A lot of people who were not supposed, and there's a gentleman in Orlando who predicted that he's going to die before this is over, and he died. And he's been selling, when there was apartheid in the 50s, he was selling league. He knows no other business.
Khanki Matabane, let me come to you. On Thursday, on this program, Newsfeed, I spoke to the Minister of Small Development, and she said to me a number just above 1,400 SMMEs had benefited from the 500 million that was allocated to her department to help these small businesses. Do you agree with her numbers? Do you know of some of these entities that have been helped out, or do you want to dispute her numbers? Mr. Matabane, can you hear me? Koli speaking here. I'm saying to you that on Thursday, we spoke to the Minister of Small Business Development, and she said an amount of 1,400 small businesses had benefited from the 500 million allocated to her department. Can you concur with those numbers? Are you aware of such amounts being dispersed?
Yes, we do work very closely with the department, specifically with the DG. So we do have the report that they've shared with everyone. The report is on the website. So we've got no reason not to agree with that report that has been published. It shows as if the effects, but again, as I indicated, is that maybe the discussion that we should be having is that enough? If you are saying small businesses development, including economic growth, creating employment, and so on, perhaps maybe the report says the 500 million that was allocated was actually exhausted. So perhaps the question we should be asking is that maybe that is not enough. So are we really doing enough to as government to assist?
Yeah.
And I think this will then inevitably bring us to the issue that we always had of the 200 billion loan guarantee scheme. Perhaps maybe some of the money that is sitting there should be brought to small business department so that it can then assist the companies that have applied that were either rejected on the basis of insufficient funds. So perhaps maybe part of that money, 500,000 or $1 billion or something, can be taken from there and brought here.
All right.
If we're serious as a country in terms of small business development, we should allocated more funds than only 500 million that was allocated.
Ms. Sifullo, can I ask you, the 500 million that was allocated to the Department of Small Business Development, you work closely with that department as an implementing agent or agency. Are you aware of these funds having been exhausted? Is the 500 million completely gone?
Yes, I am aware. And in fact, we as an agency of the Department of Small Business, we're responsible for implementing the SMME Relief Fund, which we did fully commit the funds. And we get audited by independent auditors. And the Auditor General, when they came on their first reports, we hadn't completed dispersing funds. And they said they will come back and continue the audits throughout the financial year. So in terms of the validity of the information that was provided by the Minister of Small Business Development, that has been verified by the Auditor General.
Yeah. And The 62%, therefore, that was confirmed by the minister to me on Thursday, that 62% of the 500 million had been dispersed. Are you saying that the remainder is completely gone as well?
So what happened at the time is that, as you are aware, I think, as I mentioned, we finished committing the funds in May. And then in June, if I recall correctly, we moved to level 3. SMMEs were drawing down the funds in tranches because we really wanted to ensure that the money is being used for its intended purpose, and there's no mismanagement on behalf of business owners. So the money that was left behind was because business owners at the time that were approved said, look, the economy is opened, we are now trading, and we don't want to draw down on the rest of the funds. And then the balance of the funds were redirected to an economic recovery program relating to manufacturing. Because as the department and portfolio, we realized that it's important to ensure that now that the economy at that stage was fully operating, it's important that we generate manufacturing capacity, manufacturing products that our own South Africans will consume. If there's one thing COVID has taught us, is that as a country, we have to be, to some degree, self-sufficient. We cannot constantly be reliant for all things to be imported. And therefore, the small-scale manufacturing program was implemented then. And to date, we've committed about 230 odd million in that specific program, where we are supporting small-scale manufacturers, not large manufacturers, to put products on our shelves that we South Africans can consume. And as part of a bigger program, we've also engaged wholesalers and retailers throughout the country to enlist those products that are manufactured by South African SMMEs onto the shelves of retailers and wholesalers. And to date, we have enlisted close to about 100 products on the shelves of retailers and wholesalers.
Yeah. Dumi, I'm sure you'll understand my next question to you, that it is prompted by some of the mess, frankly, that we have seen, particularly in the acquiring of PPE. So my question to you is, you have said quite clearly that you get audited for every cent that's been spent. Can you say without doubt that the monies that the agency has dispersed went to recipients who it was intended for, and it did not go to friends, and that you will not have any comebacks with people claiming that there has been massive fraud and nepotism that has happened within your agency?
So, Xoli, as you may be aware, SEFA operates as a funding agency in the core of our mandate. So the work that we do is audited all the time. So the systems and the processes we used to implement the SMME Relief Fund was the same systems and processes we use in our normal course of business. And therefore, we knew that it needed to stand up to any form of scrutiny. And in fact, we also ensured that the funds not only focus on one specific province, because as you know, Gauteng being the economic hub of the country, it is always easier to get a higher volume of applications from Gauteng.
Yeah.
And we ensured that the money was really spread as far as possible throughout the country. And therefore, our processes are completely open to scrutiny, and hence we are comfortable that there would be no comebacks. And to that extent, we've also published on the SEFA website, CEDA website, and DSTV website the names of every single company that received funding. And we were extremely transparent because we did not want any untoward allegations coming to our agency.
All right. And finally, Dumi, as I let you go very briefly, is there any hope for tavern owners like Mr. Hlongwa sitting with me in studio here?
I think there is, Xoli, and I think, I think as South Africans, we also have to individually take responsibility for some of the decisions that government ends up having to make.
Yeah.
Because if we as South Africans were able to operate in a manner that did not cause issues in our healthcare system when alcohol sales are opened, we wouldn't find ourselves in a situation where Babshongwa's business is not operating. And that is a fact.
All right.
So you and I have to ask ourselves, what role are we playing to be responsible in the way that we behave?
All right.
I think, as I mentioned earlier, as this evolves, we are not insensitive to what our people are facing.
Yeah.
And therefore, we will constantly relook at what we can do and adapt to respond to the current conditions.
All right, to me, thank you very much for joining us. Babshongwa, very, very briefly, I'm out of time.
Perfect time, yeah, great.
What happens now to you and your business? You've heard that perhaps there is a small glimmer of hope, but really right
we're
now,
hanging in there,
there's
waiting for leadership to engage with the president, maybe if they will get a hearing. But we're saying we don't want to be relegated to the 350 rands grant where we will get water bombed, and we're saying we are willing to work. Come and talk to us as government, with government, and listen to us, and maybe come up with a manner that will work, that will not impact on the spread of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Martin Hlonga, I thank you very much for making the time to come to studio here. Khanki Matabane, hopefully you can still hear me. I'm told Khanki Matabane is already gone from the Black Business Council. We thank him as well for his participation in this particular discussion. Hopefully we have been able to, I think, bring to the fore just some of the difficulties that people are experiencing, particularly business people experiencing at this time. So thank you very much to all my guests.